Hi, and welcome back to the second hour of Free for All Friday here on Focal Point. I am Brian Fisher, your congenial, convivial, and amiable host. You are listening to Focal Point, ethanol-free radio, high octane, no additives, just the straight high octane premium fuel. Now, don't forget to stay tuned. You heard the promo from Bert Harper. Dr. David Jeremiah has got a powerful message, an election message that will air right after this program at 3 p.m. in just a little less than an hour. I encourage you to stay tuned to this network and hear that sermon. Very, very powerful. Very common in the colonial days for pastors at that time to preach an election sermon. They would devote a Sunday prior to the election to reminding God's people about the issues that ought to be important to them. You definitely want to hear this sermon from Dr. David Jeremiah. Stay tuned. That'll air on this network right after this program is over. Now, one other thing on the pro-life issue, and then I'm going to take a call from Josh in Dallas, Texas, but turns out that Eric Holder, Department of Justice, he has been lethal on pro-lifers. He had been prosecuting pro-life protesters, pro-life demonstrators. Well, it turns out that he's got a serious conflict of interest, and it may explain why he does not prosecute abortion providers. You got these abortion providers all over the place that are butchering women. You have women dying in abortion clinics. You have constant emergency calls, calling 911 to get these women that are bleeding to an emergency room where they can get some help and maybe save their lives. Doesn't prosecute any of them. And here may be the reason. His wife and his sister-in-law, Eric Holder's wife and Eric Holder's sister-in-law, co-own a building where a Dr. Tyrone Cecil Malloy operates. He is an abortionist. Now, this is a guy that was indicted on Medicaid fraud charges in 2011. But that could explain why Eric Holder is punishing pro-lifers and is not lifting a finger to do anything with abortion providers. His own wife owns a building that they lease to an abortion doctor. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Josh in Dallas, Texas. Josh, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mr. Fisher. I had a question. Well, I'm just a wondering, actually. I know the tragedy in Benghazi, but the responsibility of the mission, I was wondering why Stevens actually went to the consulate and didn't stay at the embassy. If he knew or they knew at that location there was unfriendlies or there might be an attack, why did he leave his entourage or his security team at the embassy and leave to go to the consulate? That's like no one has addressed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's one big thing that I would like to know. Who made the decision to go there and why?
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate that question, Josh, and that's a good one. I think that Ambassador Stevens was sent to the consulate. He was on assignment there because he's repeatedly asking for help. So apparently he did not feel free to just leave. He had some kind of an assignment there that he was supposed to carry out. He was meeting with diplomats from other countries. We know that the night the attack happened, he was meeting with a Turkish diplomat. Why it had to be in Benghazi, I don't have an answer to that question, but I'll tell you the best explanation we have so far is that he was helping to run guns to the Syrian rebels. That's the best explanation we have, that Benghazi was like a transition point where they were actually arming these Muslims in Syria with weapons that had been taken from Gaddafi's stash. Remember, when Gaddafi was deposed, there were about 20,000 weapons. I mean, you're talking about surface-to-air missiles. You're talking about rocket-propelled grenades. You're talking about automatic weapons that were left completely unguarded. Nobody was protecting them, and you had pickup trucks driving up and carting off these weapons. Now, the suspicion is, and again, we don't have this verified, but I think the best explanation is that we are getting some of those weapons, some of Gaddafi's weapons, and Ambassador Stevens was a part of this fast and furious operation. That's what it amounted to. Get these guns taken from Gaddafi and get them into the hands of the Muslim rebels in the country of Syria. And Ambassador Stevens was facilitating that gun-running operation. And apparently what happened on that night is the guns, the weapons that we were trying to put in the hands of Syrian rebels, the Muslims in Libya used those against the consulate and against Ambassador Stevens. We got a couple of sound bites. Here is a Jennifer Griffin clip number 2. Jennifer Griffin, she's a national security correspondent for Fox News. And she has this story last night she filed about the attack on the consulate in Libya. And this is where she reveals what we talked about earlier. This is the night of the attack. While the attack is going on, administration officials during the attack, this is President Obama, I mean, he met with Leon Panetta and intelligence officials less than an hour after this attack began. They made a decision not to call together the counterterrorism security group. Here's Jennifer Griffin, Fox News.
Fox News has learned this evening that top administration officials decided on the night of September 11th, after the attack on the Benghazi consulate had already begun, not to call together the counterterrorism security group, the CSG, which is a group of interagency counterterrorism specialists that specialize in both hostage situations as well as any sort of terror attack on any U.S. interests. That decision, according to senior military officials as well as intelligence officials, it may have stymied some of the response in the aftermath of the Benghazi attack.
So that's Jennifer Griffin saying, look, there is an elite agency, this counter-terrorism security group. They're the ones that know where all the assets are. They're the ones that are tasked with coordinating a response to a terrorist activity, and they were not even convened. And so far, the White House is still not answering the question, when did President Obama find out about this attack? When was he notified? And when did he meet with the National Security Council, the NSC? And the White House will not answer those questions, and I think it's because the answers to those questions would look bad for the administration. So we are discovering now, this is Eli Lake at the Daily Beast. This is same as Newsweek. And he's been doing some good research, good journalism on this. And he said that despite the fact that the compound and the CIA annex were severely outmanned, the State Department never requested military backup. This is according to 2 senior U.S. officials that were familiar with the details of military planning. Now, this goes right to Hillary Clinton. And I think what's going on here is I think the Barack Obama administration, they're trying to find a way to lay this whole thing off on Hillary Clinton. You want to know why Bill's out there saying I may be the only person in America that is higher on Barack Obama at this time than I was in 2008? It's because Barack Obama is trying to push Hillary Clinton off the platform and under the subway. This is all State Department. State Department did not call for military attack. Now, I told you earlier, the CBA, Cross-Border Authority, Barack Obama, the President of the United States, he is the only one that can order a cross-border action where you actually violate. He did that with bin Laden. He did that with Pakistan. He didn't get permission for our guys to go into Pakistan. He just sent them in there. Cross-border authority. That's got to come from the president. And now we find out, according to Fox News, that the consulate was warning Washington 3 hours before the attack that things were looking bad. And no help came. Focal Point AFR Talk.